Okay, you're all set, Asma.
Awesome. Okay, so let me go to my agenda. So I guess that was call to order. We are going to, this is what, the second meeting of the Diversity, Equity, and Anti-Racism Subcommittee. And we first need to approve the minutes of the August 3rd, 2020 meeting. I'll give you guys a minute if you haven't reviewed it. Just let me know when you're ready so we can do a roll call vote on that. Anyone need more time? Okay. Do I have to do a roll call vote? Can I do just a general yay or nay on this one?
I believe it would be roll call, Asma.
Roll call. Okay. Let me just go down the list.
I'm taking our minutes just so you're aware.
That's awesome. So Christopher Lebrecq, what would you vote?
Chris is just here as the principal from Choxit.
Is he going to be voting?
He's not.
Okay, sounds good. Nicole?
Yes.
Evan? If you're talking, you're on mute.
And Evan is from Cable.
Evan is Cable,
Evan,
yep, I figured. Okay,
and,
I'm not seeing everyone on this thing.
And Asma, just to mention, we need to have a motion.
Oh, sorry, yes. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 3rd meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
Second.
And so let's go down again. I'm sorry, I'm going to start again. Nicole?
Yes.
Carolyn? You are on mute.
I'm just here as a community member as well as a union representative, so I haven't been participating in the votes when I've been attending subcommittee meetings.
I do not have everyone's list. I'm just going by the list I see in the chat.
Okay.
Catherine?
I don't vote. I'm just a student rep.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for unmuting yourself too. Jeffrey Haynes, Member Haynes.
Yes.
Member Longbaleo.
Yes.
Let me see who else is on. Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
And Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Awesome. And I vote yes, so that's unanimous. And the next item on the agenda is to read the comments submitted by the members of the student body. And I know we got an email with the statements. I can read them out loud so that it's kind of recorded into our meeting. Does anybody have any objection to that? Because it's going to take a few minutes. It is a lot of statements, but I think it's extremely important to really spend some time on each one of these to digest and understand what these statements mean to these kids and what they were really trying to give us the message for. So I hear no objections, so I will start so that we don't waste more time.
Member Silva, can I just add something?
Sure.
I just sent you the new updated document. I don't know how Rebecca sent them out to the committee members, but if she sent it as a PDF, you didn't get the ones that were updated within the past 24 hours. So there are 4 or 5 new ones that I just sent you on that document.
Let me just see if I can find that one then. And we can send the agenda out. I just got the updated. Hold on one second. You sent it to me, you said?
Yeah, it should be from Catherine Mangus, 21.
Okay. Yep, I think I got it. It's the student anti-racism statement sheet?
Yeah.
Okay. I will do this right now. I will read this one out loud. If people want, I can try to share my screen, but it's up to you. So student rep intro, Catherine Magnus Senior. Hello, everyone. I want to begin by thanking all of you for taking on this task, as racism is a large issue. As Robert F. Kennedy said, each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others or strikes out against injustice, he sounds out a tiny ripple of hope. I would like to say this subcommittee is that ripple of hope for our students present and future. Over the past week, I have been talking with students about racism in the Wachusett district. I created an anonymous response form that allowed students to share their thoughts with me and ultimately you all. Many students also emailed or direct messaged me to have conversations. Below are the student responses ranging from ages from the 5th grade to post-grad students who wanted to share their thoughts. I will let the students' responses speak for themselves. However, I would like to intro with a few remarks. The hate has no home stickers in our classrooms are no longer doing justice to us district students of color or other minority students. We live in a predominantly white area, which leaves students of color to be overlooked and forced to assimilate into what I call the Wachusett bubble, which is full of lack of awareness of different communities and cultures. We cannot let the lack of diversity within our district create a safe space for racism and prejudice. If anything, we need to provide our students with more education to make up for the lack of cultural learning most students get from just being around their peers. Microaggressions and acts of racism or bigotry against other minorities are common, as you will hear from the student statements below. But I would like to bring light to a major issue. Many of these students chose to remain anonymous. Although usually I wouldn't see an issue with this, while reading these submissions and talking to many students, I realize many of our students feel uncomfortable talking about racism. This comes from a lack of education and how normalized it is in our culture. I had students share disgusting stories about teachers and students. Those who reported these stories were afraid to speak up because they didn't want to get someone in trouble or believe someone displaying racist behavior weren't trying to be hurtful. But the question then becomes, does not trying to be hurtful excuse racist, bigoted behavior? The answer is no. Students should not be afraid to point out blatant racism because they don't want to get anyone in trouble. We need to normalize anti-racism conversations in classrooms if we want to ever have an anti-racist community. So again, I thank you for stating the anti-racism conversation and hope we can make Wachusett a better community for our students of color. Thank you so much, and please email me with comments and concerns at Catherine Magnus. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, 21 at wrsdk12.net. Next statement. Hannah Palmy, 8th grade Choxet. I attend Choxet Middle School. I am white, however, I've noticed instances of racism and it hurts me to see that it has motivated me to try to make a difference. At Choxet, there are core values, and these are constantly talked about in school and pushed on students. I feel as though none of these core values talk about equality. It may help if they did, or if equality was a core value in itself so that more awareness about anti-racism is spread, even if equality isn't made a core value at Choxet. I feel that anti-racism needs to be talked about more. It also should be taught and practiced in classrooms. Equality is a belief that doesn't just affect school, it affects the rest of the students' lives and should be taught at a young age. An anonymous freshman at Wachusett states, an issue that comes up a lot at Wachusett are people using the N-word, a racial slur, not knowing its history and why it's wrong. I genuinely think it's out of lack of knowing its meaning or its part in oppressing Black people in history. There was a book we read, and it had a lot to do with the racial injustice, and the N-word was used a lot in the book. This slur was used to dehumanize the Black community. Black people reclaimed its meaning. White people cannot use it for they have not been oppressed by this word. The things trending nowadays are brought about by Black culture, whether it be music, style, trends, etc. The N-word is in the mix with it, and many people don't understand why it isn't okay to use it. But with education on the topic, it will bring more awareness to it, plus really bringing action to when racial events happen. Another statement, anonymous senior Wachusett. My sister's ex-boyfriend was Black, and one time we were at lunch talking to one of our friends, a friend, mind you, when she pointed out to someone who looked nothing like her boyfriend and said, wow, they look exactly like your boyfriend. The kid was probably a foot shorter, heavier set, and had a different haircut and wore glasses. There was absolutely zero resemblance, and the fact that she said that showed me how little diversity there is at Wachusett. Honestly, she was our friend, and we both thought what she said was offensive. I feel like a lot of students at Wachusett are completely disconnected from different cultures and ethnicities and their struggles, and it honestly gives me anxiety thinking about it sometimes. In my time at Wachusett, I have heard more overtly racist and prejudiced things than I have ever heard in the outside world, and it both worries and infuriates me. Oh, and also the amount of Christmas decorations in comparison to those of other holidays has always seemed offensive to me. I've heard so many students making a joke out of the administration's lack of representation for holidays like Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, but I feel like most of us do it purely to pull focus away from how horrible it really is. Elise, senior at Wachusett. Each year in English class, I have read a book that includes racial slurs. Examples include Of Mice and Men and Huckleberry Finn. When we read this book, I have seen students say the slurs out loud. I have also seen teachers brush this off and not talk about the history of this word. I think it's important that teachers talk about the history of racial slurs and how saying them is harmful to Black students. I think if students learn this in class, they also understand how it is wrong to use racial slurs in and outside of school. I believe teachers need to also be aware by only including readings by white males, the message they are subconsciously sending to students. The message is that females of POC cannot make great works of literature. I also think this limits the perspective students receive and therefore limits student education. Kellen Fendrickson, Jr. at Wachusett. I haven't seen any real hate-driven racism at Wachusett myself, but I have seen people being inconsiderate and feeling free to say certain offensive words, choosing not to care about their history and real meaning. Another statement from Anonymous, Senior at Wachusett. I think that as a whole, Wachusett generally has no experience with handling or even discussing racial injustices, both present and past. The school doesn't handle students who are racist or systematically degrade others by the use of slurs or verbal harassment, or even through social media regarding one's race, culture, or even religion. The school needs an overall stronger grasp of how students truly should not only learn to respect each other beyond external factors, but the punishment of those who cannot adhere to the principle of equality. The issue is people cannot look beyond what they see anymore, and the school needs to teach that. Carolyn, 8th grade. I think racism has never really been an issue in my school, at least. But with all of the things happening in the world, students of color may feel differently about returning to school than they were a few months ago. I think that there should be support groups for these people and for anyone who feels impacted by racial injustice. Another statement from Anonymous, Senior at Wachusett. When thinking about racism at Wachusett, I realize that I haven't witnessed much because my classes are almost entirely white. I believe that the school district needs to do a better job at encouraging people of color to take higher level classes and making them feel welcomed and respected while in higher level classes. This could be achieved in a number of ways, and there are many programs and movements in other areas. Some ideas include promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in elementary school, having clubs for people of color, etc. Secondly, while the national focus is on Black Lives Matter right now, as it should be, I think that we as a community should use this opportunity to advocate for and include all people of color as we work towards being anti-racist. Wachusett has a relatively large Asian population compared to the population of other minorities in the district. However, I have heard a countless number of racist comments against Asians that go unpunished and unacknowledged. These range from so-called jokes about Asians' intelligence to the use of racial slurs and comparing Asians to different animals. This is completely unacceptable. I have watched as my Asian friends become desensitized to this over the years at Wachusett. Nobody should have to deal with this. I believe that this is mainly due to a lack of education. While most people are mildly aware of racism against Black people, many others do realize or do not care about the impact of racist statements to Asians. Perhaps some don't even know the impact of their comments. As we work to educate our community, establish programs and committees to fight racism and change our school environment, please do not forget about our Asian students. Finally, we must change the social structure of our school. All of the people of color at Wachusett are expected to let racist comments roll off their back and be fun and cool. If they don't adhere to the unspoken rules laid out for them, they are socially alienated and bullied. People of color cannot be held to a strict standard simply because of their race. They must be socially allowed to make mistakes, be themselves, express themselves the way they choose to, and speak out when something hurts them. This social structure affects the entire system of racism at Wachusett. Many people of color are expected to laugh off any racist comment, and by doing so, white people view that as permission to continue being racist. Excuses like my boyfriend said I could use that word, I have the Asian card, or but my Black friend doesn't mind, run rampant. This is at no fault of the people of color. The white people at Wachusett need to learn what is racist and what is not, so the people of color are not forced to either police racism or accept racism, and so that racist behavior does not continue. I would like to thank the school committee, Wachusett administrators, and student advocates for trying to make our school safe and welcoming to all. I am optimistic that Wachusett can become anti-racist through proper education and community building. Jack Borges, senior at Wachusett. While I haven't experienced racism myself, I know many POC that have, with no repercussions for anyone being racist for the most part. I think the admin should promote inclusiveness, as there are so few POC at our school, and act against racism and create a welcoming environment for all students regardless of color. Another statement from Anonymous, senior at Wachusett. I am a white student, but I have seen common occurrences and themes that should be addressed. Especially since the student body teachers admin is mostly white, these issues have been ignored for too long. I have heard white students say the N-word a few times, which is more than I should. Black students have shared their experiences in people making racist, threatening comments towards them. One instance of racism that has been sitting with me was in the 2018 to 2019 school year. I believe when a student had been making racist comments on social media to another girl, which the administration knew about because there was some sort of confrontation in the cafeteria, the girl who had been making the racist comments was still allowed to do things such as walk at graduation. Events like this or any racist event should lead to disciplinary action. In addition to addressing these issues, I think that we should have an anti-racism curriculum at Wachusett. Anonymous senior at Wachusett. Racism and racist language is far too common at Wachusett. As a white student, I have been told to put some pants on the N-word by a group of laughing boys when I quietly walked on the school sidewalks wearing shorts. I've heard my classmates scream the N-word in the cafeteria and receive no discipline, despite the multiple adults within earshot. One of my friends immigrated to America when she was in elementary school. Within her first week at Wachusett, she heard the boy next to her joking suggest that she should line up all of the immigrants, legal or illegal, and shoot them in the head. I imagine a person you just met suggesting that you and your family should be murdered. This conversation happened directly in front of the teacher. No one said anything. There needs to be an emphasis on teaching the origin of certain racial slurs and their place in dehumanizing others. Teach why they are wrong. Teach students the hard and horrifying truth of these words. History cannot be ignored or else it will be repeated. We need to eliminate the ignorance and disregard for others that's so common in this sheltered school. There needs to be a stated emphasis on reporting these incidents and a verbal outline of what happens if these incidents occur. Have students hold each other accountable. Speak on the importance of coming to administration and normalize it. Many students never report things for fear of retaliation. Others don't believe the system works or cares. I'm glad the school has formed an anti-racism committee and hopes it brings real change. Another statement from Anonymous, freshman at Wachusett. I'm going to be a freshman this year, and I feel that everyone should be taught that using the N-word is not okay. Many people's excuses are, well, I have a Black friend, so it's okay for me to use it. That is absolutely not true. They need to be taught why it isn't okay. My school has only one person of color in my grade, and she happens to be my best friend of 7 years. Every day I see the racism she has to deal with, and she is usually quiet about it or says something directly to the person. Hopefully something can be done for her and other people of color so they aren't bullied because of their race day after day, because it's terrible to see. Another statement from Anonymous, senior at Wachusett. As a white student at Wachusett, I might see racism less than a student who isn't white. The main thing that I have seen at the high school is the use of the N-word by primarily white students. I think that this is highly inappropriate, especially hearing it being screamed across a room or out loud for fun when no administration does anything to stop the use of this language. Other racial slurs are uncommon at the school. These mainly come from the same students who like to use the N-word, thinking that it makes them cool or funny. At WRHS, and maybe even starting before, we should be taught about the divides that have been caused by race and learn to be sensitive to others and not use language or actions that specifically targets one student or group of students. Many white students are allies who stand with their non-white peers in reprimanding this behavior, but it does scare me the amount of hatred that some other students possess towards a certain race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, etc. We should be taught against hate, to work together as one species rather than many different races and other subcategories, along with the learning of the oppression that the minority races and other groups have faced throughout history, and of course, why these actions are wrong. Personally, I only know of one Black teacher at the high school. I know that the school has to hire whoever they find to teach the positions needed, but many underclassmen of color that I have talked to wish that they had more teachers like them that they can go to for support in the high school where the majority of students are white. I think that WRHS wanting to form a club or a committee of students of color to check in and make sure that they are taking better actions at the school against racism is a wonderful idea. I will stand up to hate and bigotry at the high school whenever I see it and try my best to actively stop these incidents from happening with the knowledge that I currently have, most of it from social media and reading outside of school, which I think says a lot in itself. Another statement from Anonymous Senior at Wachusett. I've heard multiple people say that they wouldn't date someone based off of skin color or using the one BIPOC person that they know to excuse their racism and bigotry. That's not okay. Another Anonymous Senior at Wachusett. Community is predominantly white. Minorities like African, Asian, and Native Americans seem to make up no more than 20% of the school population. Overt racism is very rare in my experience. Covert racism, for example, playing on stereotypes, mocking accents of other ethnicities, etc., is usually not punished. Perhaps make resources lists of different examples of covert racism so that students know what is and is not acceptable. Expand curriculum of humanities classes to focus on minorities more and not from a European point of view. For example, we only learned about the scramble for Africa because it was relevant to European history. Should learn about African, Asian, etc. history. Another Anonymous from Senior at Wachusett. Racism is deeply embedded in the culture and the administration of Wachusett. The administration has done little to mitigate the continued harassment and trauma that students of color receive. Wachusett also has done little to diversify its curriculum and to teach beyond a white perspective. Slurs, racist mockery, and various microaggressions are common throughout the entire district. It is obvious how ill-informed many students are and how there has been nothing to combat this dangerous ignorance. Wachusett has a lot to do. Another statement, Anonymous Senior at Wachusett. Acknowledgement there's an ignorance on the fact that we have like 1% people of color, the curriculum itself, because for the most part of the time a Black person is mentioned in history or English class, it's as a slave when Black history is more than just being a slave. We have one Black teacher at the school and that's it, not even a Black counselor. There aren't any other minority teachers besides like Spanish and French teachers. Personally, this has never happened to me, but from what I have heard, Black students also feel targeted whenever they walk in the bathroom and a teacher is around because a teacher thinks they have drugs on them. Also, another big thing is most of the teachers have been great, but throughout my 12 years in the district, I have had plenty of teachers with racist tendencies and that have made racist comments without even knowing it. Part of it is probably because of where we live, because they have little experience with people of color, but that's why it's important to have more minority teachers and counselors or maybe even give the teachers a program. I don't know what the answer is. Anonymous, another senior at Wachusett. I think that the teachers should be more aware of what they're saying to students. They're teachers who are supposed to teach students how to be good people, so it's especially harmful when they say ignorant things. There's one thing especially that sticks out in my mind. I clearly remember because it was so blatantly ignorant, even though it happened over a year ago. Last year, there was a student in one of my classes who had Hispanic heritage. This teacher was especially problematic. She even slut-shamed celebrities in front of the class. So honestly, I'm not surprised. She would also get extremely irritated and be rude to students over the smallest things. Once in class, she gave really confusing instructions, so we kept asking her to repeat it. When the student asked her to repeat instructions that were unclear still, and she said something along the lines of, "How many times do I have to say it for you to understand? Do you need me to say it in Spanish for you?" It was honestly shocking and the whole class was literally silent. The student was obviously uncomfortable. I'm not sure if it was her intention to be racist, but as I said, teachers should hold themselves to a greater level of responsibility. Their position is teaching the future of America. I literally couldn't believe a teacher would say that to a student and humiliate them in front of the whole class. Anyways, my point is, like, after the experience, teachers need to understand the consequences of things they say. I have faced so many microaggressions and witnessed other POC experience them as well. If necessary, teachers should be educated on what microaggressions are because it's hard to understand them sometimes if you have never experienced them yourself. Not only teachers, but also students. Once in my homeroom, I was asking another student in my class questions about the different Chinese empires. Another girl overheard and said, "Shouldn't you know that?" you're Chinese, which again to her, maybe it didn't seem offensive, but microaggressions are not always obviously racist. Not all Asians are Chinese, and just because I have heritage from another country doesn't mean I know the entire history of that country. I was literally born in America and have gone to the country twice in my life. But just because I don't look white, the students just assumed I knew everything about my other country, which really threw me off guard and I didn't know how to respond. Malia Mosley, senior at Wachusett. Wachusett and its towns obviously aren't very diverse as is, but that doesn't mean there should be a lack of sensitivity to things regarding POC, such as kids sitting at my table saying the N-word, then looking at me and saying a fake sorry, or waiting for me to freak out and cause a scene, intentionally gaslighting me. Another thing is stereotyping us as these aggressive, loud people, hot Cheeto girl, or ooh, you're from Worcester, watch out. And certain students have actually said the N-word with the hard R to me, to my face, whether they claim it to be a completely unfunny joke. Simas Quercio, 7th grade. It's everywhere. Kids all the time say the N-word as well as racial homophobic slurs all the time. If you comment on them saying these things, they bully you and it goes right under the noses of the staff and they don't do anything. Another statement from anonymous senior Wachusett. I think that as a whole, Wachusett genuinely has no experience with handling or even discussing racial injustices, both present and past. The school doesn't handle students who are racist or systematically degrade others by the use of slurs or verbal harassment or even through social media regarding one's race, culture, or even religion. The school needs an overall stronger grasp of how students truly should not only learn to respect each other beyond external factors, but the punishment of those who cannot adhere to the principle or equality. The issue is people cannot look beyond what they see anymore, and the school needs to teach that. Anonymous of junior at Wachusett. There are many incidents at Wachusett where students say racial slurs or attack a group of students based on race, and punishment is not adequate and seems as though it is brushed off. For example, in the past, it seems as though students that have been racist are almost protected. But when a student says negative commentary about police, there are more severe consequences than the racist students. In this case, the punishment should have been equal because both students did something wrong. I also believe it is important to discuss racism in America in the classroom. Lucas Lang, senior at Wachusett. Will students be forced into learning about the colored community in school? Mary, a junior at Wachusett. Although I am not a student of color, I truly believe that Wachusett could add more learning of some of the remarkable people in Black history. I propose an idea that during Black History Month, we dedicate time in the classroom to learning about important people of color and that have helped our country to grow. It would be amazing to learn more about it for everyone. Anonymous, sophomore at Wachusett. Sometimes it's not just the white students who are being racist. Racism also comes from all shades of students, but most of the time, if a student of color says something racist, it is overlooked because of victimization. Anonymous, a senior at Wachusett. I have noticed that the N-word flies out of students' mouths like nothing. It doesn't even faze them. I guess it makes them think they are cool, which they are not. I think that we should be teaching students the origin of the word and how it affects the Black community. There is no reason that a white student should be using the word to address their friends. They're also white friends. Postgrad. There is an entire 3-month period for educating the school community on Black history. Saying that it is not included in the curriculum is false. I personally had to read Raisin in the Sun, Fences, and a reflection on the Emitil. It was paired with numerous documentaries and excerpts and even poetry. Saying it was an undertone unit is to me blatantly incorrect. A statement from anonymous from a junior at Wachusett. As a person with, quote, color, I have witnessed racism and experienced racism throughout WRHS. Although the school has a problem with racism, that is not the only problem. Kids with different ethnicities are treated differently in a way where it is difficult to be accepted as a person and as a student at Wachusett, at WRHS. The reason why is not only because of our color, but because our community is different in ways most students never experienced or witnessed. Because of this, we experience situations like, why do you act ghetto? What gangs are you associated with? It is extremely difficult getting through the day with the students or people constantly doing such actions as mentioned before. For some people, this can be very offensive or traumatic. Furthermore, racism is a problem at WRHS along with encounters with situations as mentioned before. Another statement from Anonymous, a senior at Wachusett. Holden is 97% white. There is maybe 2 non-white kids in each of my classes. When I walk in the hallways or are on the bus, I hear the N-word said by an immature white kid. That makes me sick. When this occurs, the person may get a stern talking to, and that's the end of it. There is no good excuse or bad that should justify the word being said at all. This needs to stop. Anonymous from a senior at Wachusett. I think that much of the racism that occurs at Wachusett is overlooked because the majority of the school is white. Word gets around some of the time, but it's overall not handled in the way that racism should be. People think that ignoring it will make it go away, but the impact that it has on Black students or any POC should not be so easily forgotten. I will never have to face discrimination because of the color of my skin, and I cannot even imagine how painful it must feel to face it in our own school. I think that students who commit racist acts of any form should face consequences for their actions, regardless of whether it ruins their future. I think that if the school openly acknowledged racism rather than push it under the rug, minority students may feel that they are being heard and supported in the community at Wachusett. Amplifying their voices in any way possible would hopefully make an impact on our community. Anonymous from a junior at Wachusett. At WRHS, racism and homophobia are things I see regularly through the use of slurs as well as making fun of people in these groups. I see this a lot in sport teams and other groups at school, such as lacrosse, football, and hockey, or individual friend groups. For sports teams, it is anywhere from toxic locker room talk to talking in the hallways, but at the end of the day, these teammates accept and ignore the prevalence of bigotry and prejudice on their teams. It is a widespread issue that has to be addressed if we want our classmates of color and LGBT classmates to be safe and welcome. Anna Bumfin, junior at Wachusett. I'm a white student at Wachusett, so I feel I will never feel what many other people of color have felt. But one thing I've noticed is the amount of white people saying the N-word casually in the halls. And it might not be important to others, but I think it's very important to educate people on how you can't say words like that. I think as a school with more than half of the students being white, we should be learning even more about what people of color have faced and help those who are not being represented at school. Statement from Anonymous, postgrad. Hello, I am an alumna of Wachusett Regional High School and want to share my experience and observations with the many different social issues here at the high school. First and foremost, racism. Wachusett is 92% white and therefore, even if people don't realize, caters to this white majority. As a white woman myself, I had the privilege of not being directly affected by this, but I know plenty of people who have had and would like to speak on I would like to speak on the behalf of them so that their stories can be heard. As I moved up through the high school, I noticed these microaggressions more and more. Students would drive in with Confederate flags tied to their trucks and face no consequences. Everyone would turn and glance at the other or 2 Black people in the room whenever we talked about slavery and civil rights during history class. Posters hung up on the wall that say, "Shoot 'em up, Wachusett," and Black people would get stopped in the hallway way more than white people. Furthermore, there is only one Black teacher in the entire school, and people always tell her she looks like Michelle Obama simply because she is Black and shares her name, which perpetuates a stereotype that all Black people look the same. During my senior year, one issue in particular took place that I'm sure everyone has heard about because of how bad it was and how bad the administration handled it. But a girl in my graduating class sent some very racist comments to another girl in my class, saying she looked like a proboscis monkey, with the nose being the shape of a legit penis and having eyes that don't open, and adding that I'll drop my cat off later as a peace offering so you don't starve tonight. She also posted a photo on social media of a cat in a paper bag with the caption "Chinese takeout," which she and her friends proceeded to kick. This year, with everything going on with Black Lives Matter movement, the racism at the school has become even more clear. A student, in answering a question about how we can solve police brutality, said, "Well, having a Black male dead is as normal as most Black people are the ones to commit the crime. They have been given themselves that, and this is their fault. They can change their ways of being who they are." Administration has proven to be horrible in dealing with these issues as well. In the whole situation, my senior year administration did barely anything to punish the girl who said all the racist comments, and they also still punished the girl who received the comments, who was trying to stand up for herself, and since she knew administration wouldn't help at all. A student who is a couple years older than me also remembers that she and her friends, while just sitting at the table in the cafeteria, would often get passed by the police officer on duty, who would stare at them, grab her taser, and then let go once she walked by. One of her friends would also get stopped repeatedly in the hallway when he was doing nothing wrong just because he was black and looked suspicious. In fact, administration has been so bad about choosing who they stop in the hallway based on looks that I learned throughout my 4 years that had I wanted to, I could have easily left the building at any time in broad daylight and nobody would stop or question me simply because of the way I looked and carried myself. Finally, I myself felt very uncomfortable having police officers at the school in the first place, especially now that they carry guns, and I know I'm not the only one. The Holden police station is right across the street. If there is any actual problem that needs police, they can get there pretty fast. So students should not have to feel threatened by a man walking around with a gun at all times, judging them based on the color of their skin, how they dress, etc. Beyond racism, Wachusett has many other social justice issues. For instance, sexism is also a huge problem at school. I've experienced it by Wachusett students twice this summer alone, and I have graduated and therefore don't spend much time with a lot of Wachusett students anymore. And I know that many other girls, past and present at Wachusett, face similar problems and have constantly been objectified by men. In my class, I heard about a nude collection that some of the boys had in which they shared girls' nudes with others and ranked them from common to rare. I don't know if the administration knew about it, but if they did, they didn't do anything. Other than the way students treat each other, however, the way administration deals with it and talks about it isn't great either. While some points of the dress code do make sense, such as wearing pants, shirts, shoes, etc., and not hiding your face, and some parts are very pointed towards girls, such as tops without straps or that reveal midriffs and backless shirts. These rules imply that it is okay to objectify women based on the way they dress. I have seen boys show up to school even not wearing a shirt and not facing any consequences for it. So why should girls be prohibited from wearing a crop top, a strapless shirt, or backless shirt on a hot day if they feel like it? Furthermore, while I certainly agree that the self-defense for women class is needed, and I appreciate it being offered by the school shouldn't just be teaching girls how to defend ourselves. They should be also teaching boys how to respect women. It's not enough just to treat the symptoms of the problem. It will only be solved once we get to the root. Although there are many more problems than just these three, I just want to keep this semi-short, so I'm going to stop at the problem with the school has with special needs students. Despite a lot of students treating them well, these students also receive a lot of hate and bullying. People make fun of them for the way they spoke, looked, and acted and treated them like they were less than human. Teachers are not much better either. Many teachers spoke to them rudely or said little comments about them once they left, which only made students more inclined to bully them if they saw the teachers were doing it as well. While all this is important to share, it is equally as important, if not more, to figure out how to actually solve the issues. While I know it is ultimately up to administration to come up with a plan, I want to share some of my ideas. First, I think using the freshman seminar class, which already exists, would be an excellent place to talk about issues such as racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. Since a class already talks about bullying, these issues should fit with that unit perfectly. If the school is able to, I think creating elective classes about Black history, Native American history, etc. would also help teach about other cultures, seeing as the history classes currently offered at Wachusett only cover U.S. after colonization and European history. Lastly, I watched a video recently in which the 3 women who started Black Lives Matter were being interviewed. The interviewer asked the women if they could only recommend one thing for supporters to do, what would it be? The first woman said, join a group. Wachusett already has a couple of clubs that are centered around social justice issues such as the Gay Straight Alliance Club and TGAL. But if they created more clubs for more of these issues, this can help spread awareness as well as information. There are also groups outside of Wachusett that students can join. For instance, I'm a part of Sunrise Movement, a nationwide movement of young people, middle school to 35, fighting climate change in Worcester, as well as being the hub coordinator of the chapter at my school. Sunrise can also acknowledge that the climate change cannot truly be fixed until these social issues are fixed as well. And Sunrise Worcester is currently looking for more members if any students are interested. All are welcome. Jackie Brewer, a senior at Wachusett. This is all opinion-based with stories from people from different ages who attended Wachusett. In Wachusett, racism is not something that is talked about. It's also often left ignored. I will be talking about some of the experiences that have happened to people of color at our school, both positive and negative. Also, my perspective of the situation at our school. It's my perspective of the situation at our school. I believe there are needs to be change and step up from everyone at our school in general, but the racial problems and lack of acknowledgement and speaking up about the situation. I believe there needs to be a change in awareness of the Black Lives Matter movement at our school to first start my argument. Starting with the administration speaking out about it and making kids more aware of the current situation we are in this day and age. With the protesting and rioting happening, we were made aware when the scandals with President Trump were occurring, but not when POC are being once again discriminated against, hurt, and killed for the color of their skin. I have witnessed and heard that POC at our school being discriminated against, being called racial slurs, and also being categorized by the ways they look or where they're from. I asked 3 questions to some of the people of color at our school, including mixed, African Americans, and Hispanic. I also included a person like me with white privilege for a white perspective on the situation for more diverse input on the situation. It's important for us as a community to recognize we have white privilege and to know what it means, and also have an insight into the racial problems occurring. To start the interviews I did with people who have either graduated from Wachusett or are currently enrolled, I will start with Debbie Miller, a white female who's a junior at Wachusett. She believes that when you're born white, you're born with a privilege that you can not get rid of, a privilege that you can use for the greater good instead of the bad. The definition of white privilege is inherent advantages possessed by a white person based on their race in a society characterized by racial inequality and injustice. Oxford Dictionary. When you are born with white privilege, you have power. People can use this power in a good or bad way. Both Debbie and I, as the people with this power, believe that we need to use this power for good to help people like I interviewed to speak about this problem. To start with, one of the more positive interviews I did, we'll start with Damian Benson, a Black male and a junior at Wachusett. Damian has never experienced any racism but sees small counts of it with looks and stares. This goes with Alex Magny, a Black male who graduated in 2019. He experienced a small amount of racism, mainly jokes and odd stares. Jokes including his time on the basketball team where the white players said before a game N-words in the front. He said he learned to deal with this and people didn't understand this is offensive. This goes along with my positives. Yes, these people either did not experience racism or experienced some racism. What I believe is that they did not understand that these jokes were being made are offensive. Growing up in a white community and having white privilege, you don't understand where the origin of these racial slurs come from. This is using white privilege in the wrong ways and not educating yourself on why this is wrong, why we cannot say these things or act upon these things. It's a form of ignorance almost because we as white people need to adapt to the culture of all people of culture as they do us. This will start my second argument within Wachusett community. We do not focus on the Black Lives Matter movement and also what is and is not correct to say. You may think it's common sense, but it is not, which brings me to the next few people interviewed, which made me realize how prevalent this still is in our society today. Malia Mosley, Black female who is a junior at Wachusett, she has encountered multiple accounts of racism. People would call Malia the hard R and say the N-word on purpose or on accident and do not apologize or feel remorse. People got mad at her for being offended about a song a few white males wrote. This song repetitively saying racial slurs. These people got slim to no disciplinary action held against them for writing and singing the song when brought to the attention of the principals at Wachusett. Next, I will talk about Maddie Diviate, a Black female who graduated in 2015 who experienced being called an obnoxious hard R and peacefully confronting the person asking, why would you say that? One of the staff at Wachusett got involved and said she took Maddie away because she thought she was going to hit her. The person who said this had no discipline. People who would also grab and feel Maddie's hair without asking, which was a violation of personal space. This is another reason why we need to talk about right and wrongs at Wachusett because people don't know where to stop. Which next brings me to Maya Mosley, a Black female who graduated in 2016. While on the bus was called a hard R, there was no repercussions on the side of the person who said it either. She also had an encounter with the white male who was trying to debate with her that the N-word is not offensive. The next person I interviewed was Camilo Alamarelas, a Colombian male who graduated in 2016 who had the most to say about his racial accounts. Camilo said, he was seen as a threat to some of the students, called names including a dirty Mexican, coffee bean picker, brown boy, and spick by fellow students. He was told to go back to his country and that they wish he would be deported. People assumed him to be a drug dealer and thought he used hardcore drugs because of his race. People thought he was intimidating and dangerous because he came from a dangerous country. These are just some of the accounts he stated with racism from students with no repercussions or discipline on any of these students who participated in these actions. The last person I will interview was Nick Mims, a graduate of 2016. Also, Nick, a black male, states that he was not allowed on school property after the time of 210, not even for sporting events or school teams he has been on, not even to work with teachers for extra help. You can see by just talking to these few people, there's a problem at our school. People are breaking our school values, not just students either. For me, hearing these stories makes me infuriated. Why should a white female experience nothing and be able to receive the best education I can with no interruptions, while these African American, mixed race, and Hispanic students have to worry about the looks and comments received by kids who have no say? Now these kids dread going to school and less motivation to get the education they need to succeed. Some of the students within Wachusett do not get the culture and background and what these people had to do get in that school in the first place in the 1900s. Why should a white female let my white privilege sit and do nothing in silence instead of speaking up and standing these stories that they have already been told but not listened to? This will now bring me to how the people I interviewed believe why there is a need for a change in the school and how we can do that, and also my beliefs on how to execute the change. The reason I am writing this is not that I was to make a problem in the Wachusett community. It is to create a change. The reason we need a change is because all these people I interviewed have a story. They have a story of discrimination and a story of racism. If I were in charge of how to make a change, I would start with staff and their ability to be able to talk about race comfortably. So no matter what your race is, you have an outlet. I would also change the fact we avoid the talk about race in our school, and I cannot think but one conversation about race in any of my classes other than slavery, but I cannot even recall that. I think there should be new rules on unbiased punishment or equal punishment in our school. In school, we have someone who is a person of color for the students who experiences these issues, who they can talk to and feel comfortable doing so. Some issues that the white faculty cannot help with as much as racial problems. Now to what the people I interviewed think, starting with Maddie. Maddie says she would change everything because she would change everything because there was no equal punishment. She believes there should be a safe space for students of color considering the demographics of the school, along with more class addressing the issues of race in our country and more diverse textbooks that aren't whitewashed. Next is Maya. She believes that there should be a cultural change in Wachusett because kids are too comfortable with saying offensive comments or educate themselves more on what is and is not okay to say. She says it's not just Black kids who have this problem, it's minorities in general. They need to stand up and speak up so they get their voices heard. The last person I will be speaking about is Camilo, who says he would change the disciplinary action so they are not as harsh for such small things and everyone should receive the same punishment for the same things. He also says he wishes there was more diversity in the school, both staff and students. He says there is no one to turn to as a Hispanic student, and it would have been helpful if there was someone who had understood everything that he was going through. After talking to these people, it made me realize how much bigger of a problem this is, and that we as a community and school should be looking out for all our students, not just the white kids. We should be sticking up for everyone and making sure everyone is comfortable. We need to make sure that everyone is getting equal treatment and also an equal education with exceptions of special ed and people who have learning disabilities. I believe that if we make simple changes in our school, this will be a reality and it should start soon. With more education of Black culture, Hispanic culture, all cultures, what is right and wrong to say to someone, and people who are there to talk to these kids in the time of need and desperation, who understand the struggles as we white people do not understand. The school would be amazing in peace and genuinely a comfortable spot for everyone. Another statement from Anonymous, freshman at Wachusett. I have noticed passive or subtle comments of racism, and these moments are almost always overlooked by teachers and staff. I also notice actions and words that are extremely harsh but have become normalized so no one says anything. This includes students saying the N-word, whether directly to a person or simply out loud. This type of action should result in punishment or at least staff noticing and calling the student out for it. Another is a statement from Anisu Munachuvie. I cannot pronounce that word, and I don't want to try because I'm going to butcher it. I will have to ask that student how to pronounce that name. Sophomore at Wachusett. Racism in Wachusett seems to be never ending for many reasons, because in the school there are the openly racists who show no shame in the racist statements they may express, and that there are the white progressives who make the racist jokes or make the racist statements but mask it with laugh or a chuckle. As a Black student at Wachusett, it's practically my everyday life. In a school week, I hear at least one racist joke 4 out of 5 days. I sometimes laugh along with the other, even though in my head I hate it. But that's because I've submitted to the fact that no one cares enough to change or to help people like me. These racist jokes have gone so far in schools that some Black people have been brainwashed into thinking that it's okay to tell racist jokes as if it's nothing. My older brother told me there's no point in taking it personal. Just move on and brush the jokes aside. This type of systematic racism will take a lot to successfully remove, at least subside. I believe this is the last statement by Dylan Nugan, senior at Wachusett. Hello, members of the community. I had sent an email for the last meeting outlining some issues within Wachusett I had hoped significant and was disappointed by how this issue has been handled. First, the use of Holden TV as a primary way to display this meeting is awful. YouTube should be preferable platform since it does not lag. Also, the frequency of the meetings is unacceptable. In order to solve the widespread complicated issue, we need more than a monthly meeting. Additionally, students need a direct way of interacting with the committee so we can converse and suggest solutions. Not to mention, by limiting the students' representation to a single member, you have effectively silenced the frustrations and demands of marginalized students. Racism, homophobia, transphobia, hate pervades throughout the entirety of our school system. They ultimately are of various bureaucratic problems in Wachusett. I would like to remind to the members of this subcommittee that every time progress stalls, students will pay the price ultimately. We are fighting the injustices and ignorance within our community that we have chose to condone and tolerate. Racism and other forms of injustice leave a multi-generational effect on students who will carry it beyond their high school years. These injustices have shaped us of our opportunities, our confidence, our culture, and our humanity. I reflect back to previous years of school and realize how entrenched it is. Marginalized students will have a say in our community, whether through the committee or more public methods. We will start change. Worcester Public students have been protesting for years and have only become more vocal. We will start to do the same. Okay. Any comments, discussion? I guess from our agenda, I do have one more thing to share that was given to us as a presentation, which I believe, Brendan, will you be sharing with us, correct? But before
Yes.
before we move on to that, are there any comments and discussion on would like to say on what we just heard?
Is it okay to jump in?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. This is a lot to take in. When I read the document, thank you, Catherine, for collecting all of this. When I read it, I could take breaks, and I needed to go through all of the statements submitted. It's very impactful to hear it all at once, and I think it's good to sit with this discomfort and hopefully spur action. But I also wanted to thank our student rep for collecting all of that. It is, I'm sure, quite a bit of emotional labor aside from the actual task itself. But I am very curious to hear the number of statements where administration or other staff didn't respond to things happening in front of them. And that's, I feel, one of the big questions I have of what's going on. But that's from my perspective.
Right. Anybody else like to add?
This is Linda. Can you hear me?
Yes, Linda.
Yeah, thanks. I totally agree with what was that Sherry who said that?
It was Linda Woodland. Linda, are you talking? Because we can't hear you anymore.
I think she accidentally left the call.
Okay, well,
She
while
should
we're
be back.
waiting for her, I do see hands. So Megan wanted to do hand after others. So Krista Bennett had her hand up. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, so that was all incredibly powerful, and you know, it hit really close to home for my experience at Wachusett, and you know, even my daughters at the junior high. So I definitely think that we need to meet more often than once a month. If there was any way that we could do a quick motion on that, or maybe we'll decide at the end of the meeting when we'll meet again. But I think that it should at least be, you know, at the very least every other week. And something needs to be implemented as quickly as possible. And for implementing something, I'm thinking, you know, setting up a safe place for advocacy. So whether or not that's, you know, an email address that people can write into and let them, and either, you know, anonymously or, you know, just letting somebody or a group, an advocacy group of some sort, know what's going on so that that issue can actually be dealt with and not just swept under the rug. It looks to me as though when people have gone to the administration of that school, nothing has been done. So there needs to be a place in between that is going to be able to talk with the school about that specific issue or those groups of issues that are coming in to them. And it can't just be held onto all year long and then get, you know, a string of emails like this. Again, it needs to be dealt and addressed with, you know, right away. So there needs to be some sort of advocacy group for that, and that needs to happen just as immediately as we possibly can, since school is starting soon. There needs to be an anti-racist class, and or make the anti-racist books that are out there part of the freshman seminar. Those are really great, thorough books to get through. There is a list of books that people have recommended for anti-racist learning. And then I think that it would be very easy for the schools to make sure that there were non-holiday specific decorations. You can go ahead and put you know, seasonal decorations up there. Snowflakes are fantastic. Put them all over everything. Make everything sparkly with snowflakes. It doesn't have to be Christmas. It doesn't have to be a specific you know, holiday. And I think that should just be like a regular rule that everyone should follow. Like, there is no specific holiday. I'm sorry, am I going far too long? Because I have a billion things.
No, you're not going far too long. Actually, I was just, yeah, please go ahead, and then
I'll do 3 more, and then we'll move right on from there.
Things that we can change, right? So like, and I want.
What can we change then with that? And so that's what my discussion is about. Like, what can we do to make these things that are very uncomfortable happen?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that what you've listed was our goals that we had listed in our first meeting as a subcommittee.
Okay.
And our charge really is to look at those goals that you listed. If you look at our meeting minutes, and we had like 4 major goals that we have decided as our charges for this subcommittee, which I believe incorporates what you had said. And our job really is to take that and figure out what other steps required to actually accomplish those.
Okay, so then I don't have to go into those and talk about them much anymore. And just to make sure that everybody realizes this, microaggressions that everyone has been mentioning, that is racist abuse. They're not micro anything. That is abuse that people go through every day, all day, every half hour, every hour, twice, 3 times, 4 times a day. Whatever they're tolerating all day is abuse that they're going through. It is not just a micro aggression. There's nothing micro about it. It eats away at a person's soul. So it's very important that we address those things and get that done as soon as possible. Gonna move on.
Great. Member Ayala, you had your hand up.
Yes, I wanted to thank the students for writing in and really pouring their hearts out and telling us what they've heard, saw, what other people have told them. I really appreciate it. And what Krista was saying in regards to having a safe haven to go to, I know you said we have our 4 goals already. But yeah, just to reiterate what she was saying, I really think having, and I don't know if we've had this on our rule, I'd have to relook at them, I apologize, but having a designated staff, a designated safe staff person at each school for the students to go to, and it being an email that is plastered everywhere that kids can use, and that designated staff person handles it, be it if there's a school counselor at the school or what have you. I really think that's important to have up and running when these kids go back to school. So that way they do have a safe person that will follow up and make sure the appropriate measures are taken if discriminatory behavior happens. So yeah, I really just want to echo what Krista was saying, and I think that's really important. If it's not added on, make sure it could be added on. And thank you.
I think that's more on Brendan's plate, adding that designated staff.
Yeah, and once everyone goes, I'll chime in at the end.
Okay. Linda, are you back? If you are, you're on mute. Okay. Well,
Sorry, here I am. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going through some rural areas, so there's some dead zones. I'm sorry. Just very quickly, my 2 points. I was following up on what Linda Woodland said about the importance of somehow teaching, supporting, helping teachers and administrators to address these racist incidents on the spot, either through some sort of training or through some sort of guidelines for how they should be handled, or probably some combination of both. That was my point number 1. Point number 2 was just that, to be blunt, this is all worse than I even thought it was, and it is heartbreaking. It really is, and so it's good. We're starting the process of doing something about it, and we have a lot of work to do. We've got our work cut out for us. So those are my 2 points.
Thank you. Catherine? Yep, go ahead. You just need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, my Chromebook's being really weird. So I want to thank you all for sitting through all of those, and Member Silva for reading all of them. It was a 17-page document. There's almost 50 of them. It's a long document. It's an emotional document. I've talked to over 200 students, and that's only 50 responses because a lot of students were afraid to write in for fear of backlash, even anonymously. We created a Google form, and we allowed them to write in, and they were still so afraid. Me and Principal Biendo were the only person that could see the responses, and he could only see if they were anonymous at first until I compiled them into that document. So he couldn't even see the people, and a lot of students were still concerned about writing in, to the point of you guys, about different clubs. Dylan Nguyen was the last student that wrote in, and he created a Wachusett Art Collective for Unrepresented Voices, and that's a new club that will start this school year. And basically, students get to create art. There will be galleries. It'll allow people of color to have a safe space to create art and do that. So that's one nice thing I want to share with you guys. And then about an in-between space, I know Principal Biendo recently just started the Principal Advisory Council. It's going to begin in 2 weeks. Has a co-chair, which is one of the guidance counselors at Wachusett. I'm one of the students that's student leaders on this committee that will report to Principal Biendo, and then we'll be talking to him. Some next steps for the student reps: we're going to try to take more surveys for them to give more information to you. And then we've also been talking about creating some sort of club or something like a student of color advisory council where they can come talk to us so we can speak to you, because I'm a white student. So yes, I see this all the time, but I don't actually know like how it feels to be targeted of these like hatred acts. So that's what's next for us and what we're trying to do in the future. And I'm trying to consolidate that document, as Member Woodland pointed out, into how many people suggested each thing, those numbers, so you can see like what are the first things that we should tackle. That's about all I have. Thank you all so much for listening to that. I appreciate
thank
it
you.
so much.
I want to look for those statistics, like you said. That'd be really interesting. Member Haynes.
Okay, thanks. Just like everyone else, Catherine, I just want to say you're doing some really great work. That's a lot of work that you've done. That's an incredible amount of work that you've done, and you can't hear it enough. You're doing some great things. So thank you, and thank you to all the students, anonymous or not, who wanted to help us with this, because that is obviously that sheds a lot of light for information that we need. My 2 points when I saw this is basically two very general thoughts. One is obviously we need a very long-term solution, which revolves around education from the beginning, from very, very young age, obviously done in an age-appropriate way, but throughout the years. That's the long approach, education over a long period of time. But I also feel that we need something that is more immediate, simply because, as everyone has so rightfully pointed out, we have a situation where people are we have situations that need immediate addressing, and there are kids who need help, and they're not getting it. What I would really be curious to see is if there was an episode, if there was an example where there was some sort of bigoted remark, a racial comment, some sort of attack, and actually an administrator or a teacher actually did intervene, and there was actually a positive resolution. And I'm not saying that cynically, as in like show me the proof that it actually happens. I'm saying that I would like to know if that happens, so we can say, okay, here's a model. Here's a situation where this happened. It was bad, and here's what this teacher or this is what this principal did, and we can use this as a building block or a template for other situations. I would be curious to know if there's a story to that, and if there's not, there's not. But regardless, we need, in addition to the long-term education view, we need something that will help people immediately. And there's been some good ideas already, so I'm not even going to try to work. Not going to go with that, because good ideas all around. But I hate the idea. I hate the idea that there are kids right now, or when school starts, who are going to want that, or people are going to behave in these ways, and people are just going to stand by. And by people, I mean administrators, teachers, people standing by and just allowing that. I mean, that simply can't happen. That's it. Thanks.
Member Amos?
Hi. I just want to say thank you so very much to the students who did write in, with Catherine talking about how uncomfortable people were with that, even with it being anonymous. I just feel then that we really need to express appreciation for the students who were willing to speak up and make them, get into an uncomfortable space and, talk through their concerns, their fear about possible reprisals. So for those students who are watching this, or Catherine, who you speak with, please, thank you, and genuinely, I appreciate the people that were willing to come forward with their stories and examples. That's all.
Megan, you wanted to wait till everyone went. I think everyone went. So would you like to say what you had wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I have a few things, and many of them are kind of action items tonight. First and foremost, and I think this goes to Catherine and the students she's reached out to, I'd like to hear from some, if not all of you, at the full committee meeting next Monday. So I don't know if you have contact information from the students who have contacted you and have shared their stories, but I feel like this is something that maybe the committee has taken a step back from, and that's not my intention as chair. So I would like to bring it back to the forefront of the committee. And I can make some changes to the agenda up to Thursday night. So if you have 1, 2, 3, or more of your students who would like to share their stories, I would like to put that on the agenda for next Monday. So that's the first thing.
Megan, can I just chime in really quickly?
Yeah, please.
Can we just share the entire document that I have? I mean,
You
it took
could-
an hour to read tonight.
I know it's that's a bit of my concern. Like, I don't want to lose our audience, and I want to make sure the voices get heard, and I want to make sure they're okay with being heard on a much larger forum that could be much scarier. So if you want to reach out and just kind of call, maybe I don't know how to call anyone out, but I want to make sure everyone is.
Yeah, a lot of them are anonymous is the issue.
Yeah.
I had to make it so that students could write in anonymously. I can post something on all of our social media platforms and ask them, and I can get things on the Google Classroom pages. Do you want them to write into questions at WRSC?
No, like, Catherine, if you can call one document for me, and then I can submit the questions, and then that would probably be the proper forum to do so.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I guess in kind of taking a step back in my role, I wanted to offer a few things tonight as well. To Chair Silva, and I shared with her one email that I received, and there were a couple others in regards to our decision to move Columbus Day to state holiday. I received emails not just from people in the community, but from students at Wachusett itself that thought that that particular decision was ill-advised, that Columbus was somebody who discovered the Americas and should have a certain status. And I know that members of this committee in particular, and myself in particular, don't agree with that status. So I just want to make sure that we are keeping those perspectives in mind while we prep our education, right?
Yep.
So prepping our education with like this fervent passion moving forward to offer the equality that is so well deserved. But I think we also do need to keep in mind that others don't really appreciate our view. So in order to get more people on board, that we need to communicate in a way that brings everybody to our purpose. And I also, and Catherine, just to applaud you, but also to make a deep acknowledgement that these racist views don't start in high school, right? They start much earlier on, and that I am also kind of thinking of a way in this vein to bring forward the voices of middle school students and even elementary school students in our purpose this evening. I think to my own Caucasian children, when we spoke of the death of Mr. Floyd, my kids told me, but I learned in school that Martin Luther King stopped racism, right? And I have a third grader and a first grader, that their education in the very primary grades was not complete. That was not anti-racist. So I think in order for this purpose to move forward, we don't just need to include the views of the high school students, that we really need to understand how our younger students are being educated and how we can educate them more properly. And I also want to really put some action points forward for Director Keenan tonight in terms of curriculum. So in terms of what I just said, ensuring that K through 12 education includes anti-racist text, includes text from a multicultural perspective, and includes text from those who are experiencing racism, not those who are writing about those racist times. And I think that in moving forward, I know Catherine's heard from about 200 students. We have many more students in our district, and I would love to see some sort of polling of the math student body in terms of what they've experienced in terms of racism and sexism, and in other ways that maybe their sexuality was not appreciated. Because I think that our charge is anti-racism, but it's also ensuring that LGBTQ rights are heard, and ensuring that women's rights are heard as well. So that is my very long-winded speech. I don't often get to talk very much, so I tonight, usually I just get to nod my head and make sure you guys are talking in 2-minute spurts. So that is what I have tonight. Thank you guys for hearing me.
Brendan, did you want to go? I do have a few words to share, but if you wanted to go first.
If I could, yeah, please. And so usually I don't talk for a long period of time, and I'll try to keep that the same, but I'm going to speak from the heart. If all of you are feeling the way I'm feeling, so this is an emotional night. We are just getting a glimpse of the experience of some of our students, and our feeling that we're having now, it pales in comparison to the experiences these students have had. It is a sliver, a fraction of what they've experienced. So I know you're all feeling exactly the same way I am. I think it's extremely brave for our students to step up the way they have. And this is not the first time they've done it. This happened back in the spring as well, when we heard from a lot of students. And whether you're anonymous or with your name on it, it's an extremely brave act. And I just want to let you know, as the Director of Social Emotional Learning and a Central Office Administrator for Wachusett, coming up on a year being in the district, action is already happening, and it will happen, not just one and done, but it will be sustained. And it's so important that you all know that. You know, I was making notes like crazy, and at one point I ran out of room. What's really important for students to know, and I think this was highlighted by members of this committee and also by students who wrote in, having that one, possibly two adults in your school to go to, that's a safe person for you to go to, is so important. We had a keynote address last week by Charlie Applestein that all faculty and staff attended, and that was a major point that he made to everybody. Be the champion for the kids in front of you, and be that safe place. That is something that is, to Member Haynes's point, an immediately actionable item. We can all do that. We can all be that for students. That safe person isn't always an administrator. It can be a teacher, it could be a custodian, it could be a secretary, really any adult that's in the school. It can also, in some cases, be an ally that's a peer, that's a student who's a friend, who's able to shore up the confidence of that student enough that they're reporting something that's been happening to them a while. If we have, once we're back in the building, this is always my litmus test for how we're doing with being a welcoming school environment. If we have students that are coming through our doorway and they're tensing up and they're starting to feel nervous, and the school building is causing that, there's something wrong. There's something really wrong. And I imagine these students that have spoken up tonight so bravely have had that feeling and are worried about that when we do go back to school in person. So, you know, the challenge is to make sure that every student has that champion, that adult that they can go to. This will be followed up, and I can tell you on my end. And here's the optimistic closure here, which I think is really important. this is an issue that's being recognized more than ever in the district, and at all levels. So at the teacher level all the way up to the administrative level. And there is a strong push to have action happen. To Member Haynes's point, we need to do things in the short term that are going to help these students. Part of that comes down to the bullying reporting that we have happen. That is really where some of this sits as far as reporting. Students are protected as reporters, but we all know in reality that students are hesitant to go down that road because even if it's anonymous, they feel like there could be retaliation. So it's on my end, it's working with administrators to make sure that we're following the procedures that we have in place and that we are taking steps during the investigation to protect students that could be vulnerable to things happening to them. Because in students, we've all been students at one point, even if we're not Catherine here on this call, and we know that sometimes students can figure things out. And it's also, to the point of everybody here, this was said many times, it's recognizing when discriminatory actions are happening, or at least could be happening, so that we can take that action. So again, I talked a little bit more than usual, and I don't want to take away our time, but I just want to speak from the heart tonight and make that pledge to everyone.
Thank you so much. In fact, in some ways, I'm glad you guys all had a chance to speak before I spoke, because I needed some time to digest everything I heard. And full disclosure, as many of you know, I am an alumni of Wachusett, and I might have been living in a bubble of some sort, because I did feel some microaggressions, but honestly, I was oblivious to a lot of things, or maybe I just didn't feel it. But my children did go through some of the things that were described in these statements, and it really hit home hearing that it's still continuing and other children are still suffering in these same manners. What I heard from the statements, and I made a list of just broad topics that I kind of picked out what I heard from the statements is the topics of racism. And I would like to include the topic of colorism. Racism is a very definitely American issue, but colorism is a worldwide issue. So when we are talking about it, I think, talking about both types should be very important. Talking about religion, talking about sex orientation, and talking about ethnicity. And the last topic that I've heard constantly in these statements is the discipline. I know, Brendan, you were saying that there is a way of reporting bullying, but is there more information we can get? Because from these statements, all I keep hearing is that teachers didn't respond, or administration didn't take it seriously, or teachers did not report X, Y, and Z behavior. Like, what kind of guidelines are we giving teachers to say, these types of actions need to be reported if you witness them. And when you witness these type of actions, these are the punishments that are outlined, so that everyone is on the same page, right? Because what I heard from these statements is some students are saying the same behavior of one, depending upon ethnicity or race, was given a different punishment versus the same behavior for another. So I think that's definitely a to-do that I would like to see at the next meeting. Another aspect that we can start getting to work on is curriculum. We've heard even from the members and from our students, and one of our charges is to look at the kind of curriculum and aspects of teaching we're doing at each grade level. So the way I see it is it's more like a chart, right? In terms of the topics that I just outlined by grade level, how are we introducing these topics, each one of these topics at each grade level, so that we can look at it and say, is this appropriate? Are we teaching from all different perspectives? Are we teaching from the history of the Europeans and the history of the Africans and the history of the Asians? Are we teaching from all these different perspectives? And I think it would be great if we could get some sort of Excel sheet or outline having these charts by grade level with these topics and how we're addressing them.
Sure, and I'll just respond to that quickly if you don't mind.
Sure.
Asking about. Yeah, so you're what you're alluding to there is an audit, like a curriculum audit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yes, that's something I've been planning to do very, very soon. Takes a bit of time in a district this big, but I'm already started on it. So I will. And the first thing that you asked for is a report out on basically the steps we're taking to ensure that students, teachers, administrators understand the reporting procedures.
Well,
Is
not
that
just the
correct?
procedures, more
And
of what
yeah,
constitutes to make a report. So one of the things that I have read through these statements is comments were made, but they were ignored. And what I'm assuming is maybe some of these teachers didn't think it was something that should have been reported, or was
sure.
or was something that was drastic enough to report. So making it clear of what actions should be reported and encouraged to be reported. And lastly, I also want, as one of our goals, is to not only talk about the curriculum, but to talk about, what kind of education are we giving the students and the teachers and administrators. I know you just talked about one of the presentations that just happened, but these are like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different topics that we just outlined as topics that I see as a theme going on in some of the comments that we're hearing. In terms of PD and what we are teaching students, exactly just like a audit. What are we doing for teachers on all these topics, and what are we doing for students? That want to dig deeper. I know some of the suggestions was, have a class on, the famous, Black American, people in this country, or some sort of other types of curriculum or classes that people can dive into further to learn other people's cultures, to learn other people's religions, to learn other people's beliefs, so that way it not only are we just stopping at just from one session, presentations, but really including it in of people who want to go deeper. So those were my 3 requests that I would like to start seeing to discuss more in the committee. If we want to move on to our next item on our agenda, I think, Brendan, you have the steering wheel for that. If you wanted to go over that.
Chair Silva, if you don't
There
mind.
are a couple hands.
Sure. Oh, sorry. Did I miss it? 'Cause I'm
Sorry.
looking at another screen. Oh, yes, there are. Okay. I believe if I'm correct. Okay. So Krista, Member Bennett, you had your hand raised again.
Yes, so just really quick, a question. I know that we talked the last time about how, including a curriculum that is more diverse is what we would ultimately like to do and make sure that that happens. But also because there is kind of a bully or mean is cool culture going on in our district, trying to go in, directly to that and working a curriculum that will follow them through all of their grades, talking about, what the impact of bullying can do to somebody is important. And, there are several curriculums that start at, preschool and expand and get bigger throughout high school that could easily be added as an addition to what we currently have in there. It's very parent participatory in there as well. So just making sure that it's not the victims that are separated and then taught not to be victims, but that we are helping alleviate bullies from being bullies or becoming a bully in any way, kind of knowing what their bully action has been or is, and trying to help them, get past feeling the need to be that and what, happens when they bully. So instead of, teaching the victims, that to support groups for the victims and then teaching the bullies how not to be that from day one is important. Is that something that we are implementing as well so that it's easier for the anti-racist curriculum to actually mean something?
I can. Was that an open question for now, or more? Because I can respond to that briefly.
Yeah, Brendan, actually, it would be great.
Okay.
Just a little.
Yeah. So, you said a lot of important things there. Character education really is what you're describing. So it's this teaching the whole child idea that is one of the reasons my position was created, was to proliferate that throughout the district. On a good news side of things, there are pockets where it's happening. We do have at all levels varying programs related to social emotional learning, and specifically related to character building. We have a lot more work to do on that. That's another piece of my side of the house, as they say, is looking at all of that. But it's all related. It's not separate from what this is. So full disclosure, we do not have a cohesive social emotional learning program across the district at this time. But that is the goal for that to happen. There's a lot more I could say about that, but that's the brief response, because it gets at what you said, which is so important, Krista. It's working with both sides of the problem, and it's building skill in those kids. Just to put out there, really, what my background is restorative practices and working with kids on building these skills. And until you get to the root cause of what's going on, like what's causing the behavior to recur, it continues to happen, and it actually continues into adulthood if it's not checked. It's about learning skill, and empathy is the key with all of this. It's being able to put yourself in the shoes of another. And that is another thing I'm just so struck by with these student comments, is that even students who are not students of color were putting themselves as allies and trying to, as best they can, understand that experience. It's very developmentally amazing for kids in high school and middle school to do that. So that's all I'll say.
Member Weeks.
I guess my comment's just a request for information, kind of on the opposite end of the discipline we've been talking about. There was actually just a report today on the really disparity between white students and Black students with the number of write-ups and discipline referrals in the state of Massachusetts. So I would love to see a report from Director Keenan on just the discipline referrals by ethnicity in our district, middle school and high school, obviously, with what students have been disciplined for what offense, and to have that broken down by ethnicity and gender, just to kind of see if we are already seeing really a disparaging trend towards students of color being disciplined versus students of more Caucasian ethnicity. Thank you.
I think we have Member Woodland.
Just one quick thing. We've been talking about this in terms of when we return to the buildings, but racism and any kind of bigotry or can happen online in the remote setting as well. So I just want to make sure that this isn't something that we wait on until we're in person, but along with the million other things that are upon the shoulders for remote, I think it's really important to not turn a blind eye to this impacting during a remote setting as well. And it can be a lot more insidious in this way, a lot more secret. And so just to have that on the district's radar for these next however many weeks. And that is all. Thank you.
Sounds good. If our discussion on this is over, Brendan, did you want to take over and share with us the presentation?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes. And are you going to read through it, Asima?
Sure.
Okay. Just
I might have to get some water, but sure.
Okay. Oh, I know. You've had a lot of reading. Just hang on one moment, please. I just want to know if that's if everyone can read that. So.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Just let me know when to change slides. Thank you.
Okay, so this was asked for me to have this shared, and I, just found out today, like we could have it shared in this meeting, and I didn't want to wait a whole nother month because we had originally thought of meeting in another month, but I would have loved if our student who gave us this would have been able to present it herself. But it is an important topic, and I've heard about this particular topic for a while. And let me just get started. So the question is, why should Wachusett retire the current image of the mountaineer, and how does that apply to an actively anti-racist school culture? It's a presentation by Isabella LeBlanc. She just gave it to me this month, and let's go get to it, to the next slide. So the history: in 1955, Wachusett Regional High School founded and Mountaineer first appeared. In 1955, the same year, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to change seats on a bus due to the color of her skin. In 1964, Civil Rights Act passed bans discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origins. And in 2020, we have the ability to make change this year. So next slide, please. So in just statistics, women on average are paid 79% of a man's salary. Black men are about 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men. When arrested, on average, Black men received sentences 19.1% longer than those of white men convicted for the same crimes. 2015 to 2016 school year, African American students represented only 15% of total high school students, yet made up 44% of students suspended more than one time and were 36% of students expelled. Next slide. Mental health statistics. According to Child Trends, a nonprofit, nonpartisan research center based in Maryland and the nation's leading child research organization, suicide is the second leading cause of death among teenagers in the United States. Multiracial students are the most likely to consider suicide, as about 1/4 of the students reported having considered it 1 year before surveyed. Female students consider suicide about twice as often as real male equivalents. And there's a chart next to it. You can see that in 2017, female high school students reported seriously considering suicide at nearly twice the rate of their male counterparts. There's a 27 increase since 2009 for, I believe, according to the legend, what is the yellow mark? Female. And for male, it's 16% increase since 2009. Next slide, please. Yep. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26. 1. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. 2. Education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. 3. Parents have a higher prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. What is a mountaineer? A person who takes part in mountaineering, the act of climbing a mountain. Our current mascot does not look ready to climb a mountain as he lacks climbing gear. Good point. Yearbook archive cover images. 1955, it's a black and white. 1963 and 1978. Small actions have a large impact. So one of the quotes shared is, "I am a believer of butterfly effect. A small positive vibration can change the entire cosmos." Amit Ray. It has been said that something as small as a flutter of a butterfly's wing can ultimately cause a typhoon halfway around the world. Chaos theory. Oh, do small things with great love. Images are powerful. Black Lives Matter. The Wachusett image, and we see our flags and the Confederate flags, the peace sign, and the swastika. Will the committee express its dissatisfaction with the current racist, sexist, and violent mascot image and call for a change? So I guess that's the discussion on the table at this point. Did I called Linda, correct, for the last one? I don't see any new hands. Anybody would like to discuss what we just saw a presentation on? Member Haynes? Wait a
Thanks.
second. Yeah, go ahead, Member Haynes, and I'll ask Krista.
Okay, thanks. I just wondered this could be what if this might be a chance for some of the arts students to to take on a project. It's just an idea, but maybe maybe if people could come up with some new ideas for what the logo could be, and there could be they could present some different ideas, and maybe people could look at those. We could figure out if the kids want to vote on that. It seems like I understand the questions that are raised. It seems like it might be an opportunity for some people who not only have the passion, not just for the art, but also for the mission to get involved and work on something like that. It's just an idea.
I believe, if I can be corrected, Brendan, I believe that at least maybe 2-3 years ago, there was several options of students who had drawn new mascot images to be chosen from. I believe the students had tried that.
I don't know the answer to that.
I see Catherine shaking her head, so she might have more information on it.
I can speak to that. Oh, sorry. Remember, you can go.
No, go ahead, Catherine. That's fine.
I think it was one or two survey of the whole student body with parents and community members. And I believe at that time voted against changing the mascot, as we felt that we liked our mascot as it was, as the community voted. And they gave us several options. They asked if we wanted it to be female or male, if we wanted to change the race, or if we wanted to remove the gun, things like that. There were several options, and at that time, students did vote, and parents did vote to keep the mascot.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I recall that survey too, and I think, if I recall correctly, the percentage of students who voted to keep the current mascot was 84%, or something similarly very high. And I guess that my thought is that we have a lot of very important tasks to tackle here, and I worry that focusing on that one, at least at the outset here, is going to what's the word I'm looking for? It's going to take us away from issues that I think are, frankly, not. I mean, I see that as a symbolic issue, a symbol, and I think we need to address issues that are not just symbolic, but are really very substantive. And I worry that it will take our energies away from addressing those, and it may be an issue that will actually encourage opposition to the many things that we're trying to accomplish on other aspects of this issue. I just think it could be a distraction and not a helpful one at this point, at least at the very outset. I think we could revisit it later, but I would start with things like getting teachers and administrators to helping them to take action. I would start with things like that rather than something symbolic. That is quite likely, I think, to create a lot of opposition and maybe undermine our efforts to do other things.
Thank you, Linda. Member Benet? Krista?
Oh, do you mean, I'm sorry,
Yep.
Bennett? Yeah, no, it's okay. So I agree with member Linda. I think that it would be great to change that mountaineer around, but people are very, very in love with it. That I have seen, even conversations that are online, currently right now about that are very about that mascot, and it can definitely be something that we address later on, and it definitely should be something that is addressed later on, and I agree that it should be updated. It is just, I mean, it doesn't even represent how awesome we are in any way. So it definitely should be something, but as of right now, we have other issues, I think, that are more pressing.
Thank you. Member Ayala?
Yeah, I'm really surprised that a lot of people like that mountaineer. I never even realized he held a rifle until I saw comments about it. So I'm anti-gun, so I think the rifle should go. The man can stay, a woman, I don't care, whoever's voted in. But yeah, that doesn't signify something very welcoming to me too. So I agree with Member Long-Belial also that we do have other issues that we need to address first. But I definitely think this is something that we should have on our list of to-dos. So thank you.
Okay. If anybody else has any comments, or because I'd like a comment to share. Like I said, I am an alumni of Wachusett, and I'll be honest, our mascot always confused me when I was in high school. I didn't understand why a mountaineer was skinny, because in my opinion, if they climbed mountains, they really should be pretty buff. Didn't understand why they were carrying a jug of whatever and a rifle at the same time. How do you hunt that way? I remember asking a classmate of mine, how exactly does that represent us? Like, what do we do that represents that image? You know, like scraggly beard, unkept hair. I didn't get it, and I was confused, and I'm still confused. So, but that's just someone who didn't understand what a mountaineer, like someone actually explained to me, oh no, it's this image of this drunk person who, you know, likes to shoot. And I said, how does that represent us? But again, like I said, that was my experience as a high school student, very confused on that mascot. But I agree, it's up to the committee on if we're going to tackle this particular issue or if we're going to tackle it later down this year. But definitely wanted to share what the student had. And I thought it was a great presentation with a lot of statistics. It makes me proud that our students are this educated and know how to present such a difficult topic and still advocate for it, for a change. I believe in terms of our agenda, let me check our agenda. Where was it? There we go. I believe that is the end of our agenda, correct? Brendan, do you have it open? I'm trying to find mine.
Yes, we have. Next would be prioritizing next steps, which we already
did.
We did.
So, anybody have? I think before we have a motion to end, anybody have any items for prioritizing or anything on the next meeting they'd like to see?
So can I?
Sure.
I just want to bring it back again that to ask if we can meet more than once a month.
I believe that would be a motion if that's
okay. Can I make a motion to meet twice a month or every other week? Would that?
Well, I guess you can make that motion, but Brendan, since we gave you like kind of itemized things we would like to see to discuss as our next steps.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. So we need to figure that out because I'm taking the minutes as well here, and the list, we're going on to a couple pages here. I'm more than happy to get the committee to come and present on whatever's needed. The things that were asked for, though, would not even be able to be covered really within, unless I took over the whole meeting. So I do want to kind of manage expectations there, keeping in mind that I'm in charge of a lot of things here in the district, and it's going to be impossible for me to get everything to you. So I'd be interested in prioritizing and finding out what would be the most pressing. I could probably guess what those were based on the conversation, but I just want to be realistic about that because it really, it would be impossible, especially if we went in every other week scenario.
Could it be, could we prioritize the advocacy so that the children or the kids or anyone has a way of communicating those activities right away? And could we meet just to make sure that that has occurred, since school is starting right away and we want to make sure that that's something that is
Absolutely. And
beginning?
also, yeah, and I just want to make sure that I'm being clear that it's not an unwillingness. It really is just a logistical time issue, because I need to go out and actually do all these things as well. So absolutely. The other piece too is the reporting related to bullying, and that would be something I'd be prepared to do for the next meeting. The curriculum is honestly going to be more of a that takes time. That's going to take time to get. So I just want to be authentic with you all on that.
So in your opinion, Brendan, what would you be able to produce so that we can either have a meeting in 2 weeks, or if you're telling us, like, what is a time frame that you would have one of those priorities that we listed ready to be discussed?
Yeah. So, and I do want to mention too that it is my goal to have the stakeholder group that I presented at the last meeting. We are going to be putting together a district stakeholder group related to equity and access and racism as well, all in one. So my planning for that was going to be happening in like the next month. So with that, the ones that I just mentioned, the bullying reporting, which would be related to this kind of reporting, and some of the steps that we've taken with administrators and staff, I can report out on that next meeting, even if it's sooner than a month.
Okay. So, Member Bennett, it's up to you if you'd like to make that motion, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, I guess just one more question with that. Can an advocacy solution be created in the next 2 weeks so that we can have a meeting to confirm that at least one piece has been created for the students?
And just clarity on that, Krista, that would be, you mean about that kind of safe reporting, that anonymous reporting? Is that what you would consider that? I see you're nodding, so okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's actually part of our bullying training too, and I want to emphasize that as part of it. So absolutely, yes. I appreciate the question.
Then I would like to put a motion out that we meet in 2 weeks.
Okay, so to clarify, your motion is at least for the next meeting, we meet in 2 weeks, not change for the entire year, as a bi-weekly.
Okay, so I would like to meet bi-weekly. Can I make that motion to meet bi-weekly?
Do we have a second? If someone's seconding, they're on mute. So if that doesn't pass, you could maybe do a motion to at least meet the next meeting for just at least one of them.
Yeah, so then just we'll meet next week, maybe not always every other week, but not next week, I'm sorry, in 2 weeks, just to make sure that that one piece of the puzzle has at least been put in place for the students, because they are beginning right away in school. They're beginning very soon. So my motion is to meet in 2 weeks and then reevaluate meeting schedule from there.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have discussion on the motion?
I support that.
Thank you, Linda. Anybody else?
If you don't mind me just jumping in, this is Linda Woodland. The only reason I was hesitant is because of looking forward to all of the number of things that the committee in general has in front of them. But I think that in 2 weeks, and then maybe potentially every 3 weeks after that, so it would still be more often than a month, but just to give that flexibility for what, and from my understanding, this wouldn't preclude us from continuing on to every 2 weeks if we find it workable. So that's all. That was just to explain my hesitancy before.
Did you want to amend it? Sorry, is that not an appropriate question? We can amend it.
Oh, no, I think that as you put it this time, makes sense to do 2 weeks and then evaluate as we go on.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Can I just say one thing really quickly?
Sure.
A lot of the students I've talked about think that you guys need to meet more frequently than monthly. And I know you have a ton of other things, and this is an extracurricular or whatever you want to call it for you all, but the students need change, and you can't do that once a month. Like those, I collected those comments back in July, a lot of them. And yes, it did give me an opportunity to collect more, but like not meeting more frequently than a month is going to be really harmful to students' education, because the less frequently you meet, the slower change happens.
Well, can I respond to that too? Because I definitely, I know where students are coming from there. What I would say is the work happens outside of these meetings. So the actual doing of it happens outside of here. As an accountability check, these meetings are really helpful. Turns out I don't need that kind of motivation, but I do understand, the committee wants to hear about this. So that would just be an important piece, I think, that the work actually does occur outside of this.
Yep.
That helps.
I just want to be fair to everyone, fair to the administration to get the, information together so that we can actually make and have productive discussions and decisions. So in terms of what we are told, if in 2 weeks we can get that portion of that information to be able to discuss and make some, progress on these topics, it brings us to September 22nd, I believe, would be that proposed next meeting. So if nobody else has any comments, we can take a roll call vote on this motion of meeting for the next meeting in 2 weeks. So I'm just going to go down the list of who I see. Member Ayala.
Yes.
Member Woodland.
Yes.
Member Bennett.
Yes.
Member Amos.
Yes.
Member Haynes.
Yes.
Member Longbalil.
Yes.
And Member Weeks.
I actually don't get to vote, but applaud the motion.
Okay. And I vote yes. So I guess that's unanimous. So we'll be doing the next week would be the September 22nd is, I believe, what would land us on 2 weeks. If that's all we have for discussion today, then I can take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So seconded. Member Ayala.
Yes.
Member Woodland.
Yes.
Member Bennett.
Yes.
Member Amos.
Yes.
Member Haynes.
Yes.
Member Longbalil.
Yes.
I guess, Megan, you won't vote for if we end it. And I vote yes. Thank you all for attending today.
Thank you so much, Asma. Great
Thank
meeting.
you.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
Take care, guys.
You're welcome.